Hey, welcome back to another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed with Thaddeus and Evan, where we have good conversations with good people, and a good conversation with having is worth having drunk. But in this case, we're not drinking today because, well, I drank a lot over the last couple of days. So, and Covey doesn't drink, so there we go. We'll have some waters. Glad that you could take some time. Covey and I were chatting yesterday, about what you do, and happy to have you on to talk about really, the topic that we talked about a little bit yesterday. And a lot of times when businesses get ready or positioned to sell their business, they might not necessarily know what to put in place to be able to adequately sell it. And that's one of the topics that I really want to get into, specifically for that, because there's in most times, people are building a business for, I guess really three reasons. One is you build it to sell it. One, you build it for a legacy to transition to your kids, or you just build it for cash flow and you keep it, right, as part of a long-term retirement plan and use the money to do whatever else you want with that. But a lot of times it's usually selling it or legacy into that. So I'm excited to dive into that topic. So why don't you, I guess, start off with tell us a little about yourself, how you got into working with Any Hour.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me. So I'm currently the VP of M&A and partnerships at Any Hour Services. We're located in Orem, Utah. Our business alone has grown to about $100 million is what we'll do this year. That's all organic, no acquisitions. That's just good old-fashioned growth over the last 15 years from about 1 million to over 100. So pretty incredible what they've done. I can't take credit. I've only been there a year. But we're now private equity owned or private equity backed. So about 2 years ago, July 2021 is when Knox Lane, the private equity firm, made an investment in Any Hour. And then the strategy becomes growing not only Any Hour, but also finding other people that want to join us and use our processes and best practices to help their businesses grow as well. And so that's what we've been doing. And we're up to 22 different brands,
Wow.
28 locations, 10 states. So all west of the Mississippi. We've kind of been regionally focused, at least for now. So that's been a whirlwind. But to kind of answer your question on my background, I have an accounting and finance background, not one in the trades. I never thought I would find myself in the trades. Never really thought about the trades.
Right.
So I got a degree from BYU in accounting and a master's as well. It was just one extra year. And then went to work in New York City for 4 years for KPMG, which is one of the big four accounting firms. And I was in a group called Deal Advisory.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked with private equity firms on a variety of different transactions and a few Fortune 100 companies too. So got to see a lot of different industries, got to just kind of think about deals and how they worked. And after a while, decided to go to business school. I wanted to just do, instead of just the accounting side, the quality of earnings side, I wanted to do more of that deal process. I wanted to see how all the pieces fit together. Because the fun thing about mergers and acquisitions is when you're looking at a company, it's not just what the financials look like. It's how do the people work? What does the leadership look like? What's the growth strategy? There's so many things that kind of tie together to make a business good. I wanted to see more of that. So thought business school would maybe be a way to do that. Went to business school, and in between years 1 and 2 of business school, saw an advertisement on the school job bulletin, I guess, looking for an intern. It was a company named HomeX. They used to own Schedule Engine. Some people may be familiar with that product that was recently sold to ServiceTitan. They had that B2B software, but they also owned service companies. And they were looking for someone to come and do M&A. And it was basically a startup doing M&A, and that's a really unique combination. So I learned more about it and was intrigued and thought, why don't I go check this out? Spent the summer and realized that the trades are richly complex.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who may not be in them may just think you call, a plumber shows up, fixes your problem, and goes back. But there is so many layers of complexity to doing that well and doing it at scale.
Mm-hmm.
And technology has made that a little bit easier for us to do over the last couple of years. But I just kind of fell in love with the trades, not only the impact that they're having on customers and individuals' homes, but also companies that are doing the trades well are elevating the trades for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Technicians' lives are improving. It's a profession of nobility. And so I just loved that. And so I came back after I graduated from business school and was there for about a year and a half. They were based out of Chicago, but that was right during COVID. So I was working from my basement in Utah, which I didn't like very much. There would be days where I just wouldn't see sunlight. And so left that company after a while, and then was reached out to by a headhunter from Any Hour that was looking for someone to come and help them with M&A. And so that's why I made my way to Any Hour, and I've been there for a little over a year now.
Nice. And Any Hours, Dustin Orman, Van Orman, has been on the podcast before, and Wyatt Hepworth, and just what they've built and the culture in everything that they do is just a phenomenal organization within anything. And so that's probably why you're really, really happy there. So I guess in terms of some of the M&A stuff that you've seen, and maybe it doesn't have to be specifically to HVAC or the trades right now, what's one of the most interesting deals that you've been a part of?
Let's see. One of the most, the fun thing about deals is they're all different and they're
Mhm.
all unique. Something always comes up that's just unexpected. You learn something about a business and you're just like, oh man, like we've got to figure that out. It's either a legal issue, an HR issue, an organizational issue, a people issue. Sometimes it's a finance issue. But that's kind of part of the fun of deals is you never quite know what you're going to get. So I'm trying to think of a specific one that's interesting. We recently, something that was kind of fun, as I said, NER has grown organically. We haven't done any acquisitions, especially in the state of Utah. And up until just a few months ago, all of our partners were outside of the state of Utah. Most recently, we had a company by the name of Black Diamond join us, which is a Utah company. And they're pretty big. They're in the $40 to $50 million range in terms of revenue. And so it was an interesting approach strategically to think about, well, how do we operate two large businesses basically operating in the same MSA? Salt Lake City, the greater Salt Lake area, it's not huge. We got 2 million people. And so two big businesses, what are we going to do? Do we consolidate the brands? Do we consolidate management teams? Do we let customers know that we have these two brands? It's just kind of an interesting strategic question of what would this potentially look like? And we're going to still continue to think through that. But the decision now is to just keep the two brands and run the two brands. We're implementing best practices at both. We've taken a lot of good ideas that they do well and put them into our business. They've taken a lot of ideas of things that we do well and put it into their business. We can kind of lean on each other, and even when we're busy, send leads to our sister company who may have more availability or be able to just do it quicker. So it's been an awesome opportunity to have another awesome business right down the street from us.
No, and that's like when you look at, that's one of the things sometimes when people want to sell their business as well. What's going to happen to my brand? What's going to happen to my baby? Is it going to stay mine? Is it going to go merge into somebody else? What's going to happen to my team? What's going to happen to my people? All things that need to be taken into consideration when doing that business. But I think might as well, if you got two big power brands, well, you might as well just keep them separate, because now, one of my old bosses, I worked at State Farm back. It was like my second job out of university. And then I asked him, like, I didn't know shit about advertising. I'm like, so why do you spend so much money doing all this direct mail and this advertising and yada, 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 and all this stuff? I didn't understand it at the time. I was also like 25 years old, and, never really, I guess the internet was still kind of there. So,
they spend a ton on advertising.
Yeah, a ton. And so I'm like, why do you keep doing it so locally in your office? He's like, well, I want to be number 2 until number 1 drops the ball. And that stuck with me, though, because when you think about, I want to be number 2 until number 1 drops the ball. Now, if you position yourself as the 2 leaders in the industry, well, hey, you know what? One person might be with one company, or one individual might be with any hour, and one might be with Black Diamond. Well, when Black Diamond drops the ball, because even though you don't want them to, it happens, right? As part of business. Well, they might go to any hour. And so now you've actually been able to capture, I think, more of the market in that regard. Sometimes, not always, but and transitioning to that sale piece, though, of selling a business. And a lot of people are listening is, okay, great, well, how does an M&A apply to me? Well, it goes back to what we talked about, those first 3 things earlier. Are you positioning your business to sell your business? And I would say this, and I say this time and time again: be happy with the size of business that you are. You don't have to grow to a $10 million or $20 million, a $50 million business to have a successful M&A on it. And obviously the M&A is rolling up into the brand using the best practices. And I'm assuming the owners in your guys' case likely stay on, would be my assumption. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's probably some cases where they want out. But if a business is getting ready to position to do an M&A or make a straight sale for that matter, what are some things that they can do to make their business more attractive for when they are ready to do that?
Yeah. Well, and I liked how you started the podcast where you said there's 3 reasons why people own businesses. And I think what we look for in a business is a path you're going to want to take regardless of which of those 3 you're planning to do. If you're planning to hold the business into eternity, great. You're still going to want to do some of the stuff that we're going to look for. That's the mark of a good business. It doesn't necessarily, you don't do those things to sell it. You do it to create a lasting business that's going to be successful long beyond you. And when you're selling a business, that's important. We want to know that the business is going to survive past you. To your point, our strategy is one where we do not kick owners out. Some owners just want to sell their business and go away. And that's great. As long as you have a strong GM in place and the culture is sound and you've got the leadership team, we're okay with situations like that. But for us so far, the 22 brands that we've acquired, all of the owners are still in their businesses to one degree or another. And in fact, some owners that have been less engaged in their business historically have gotten more engaged since joining the partnership. It's just a new chapter. There's exciting things, there's momentum in the business, and it reinvigorates some people. So for us, we want to keep owners. That's super important for us. But maybe I can talk about some of the things that we look for when we do look at businesses. Some
Yeah,
of the
100%. And because I think that applies, even if you're not going the roll up into the M&A road and you're going, let's say, straight private equity, the things are still going to be the same.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'd say there's three main buckets of things that we look for. And frankly, M&A is much more art than science. There's no exact formula that we follow. I don't fill out a form and score each one and calculate it up and say this is a yes or this is a no, or that determines this, this value or that value. A lot of it is feeling. So some of these things are hard to measure. So I'd say the first bucket is leadership and culture. We're looking for businesses that have a strong culture that aligns well with ours, meaning we're looking at any hour, we have a saying of win-win-win, meaning any decision that we make, the company has to win, the customer has to win, the employee has to win. We're looking for businesses that have a similar values and culture to us. Secondly, as a part of that is leadership. Not only do we want a good leader, we need a leadership team. We need a system to develop leaders. And the reason why is pretty simple. Eventually, we're all going to retire. And we need to know that this business isn't going to just fall apart the minute that the founder leaves. We want to make sure that it is a strong culture with a history of developing leaders. So we love to see depth in that leadership position. And typically what that means, frankly, is as the positions or as the companies that we look at, is it usually means we look at bigger companies. A $1 million company is just going to have less leadership because you need less leadership. It's going to be the founder and maybe the spouse and a service manager tops. A $10 million business is going to have probably a founder owner, a general manager, several service managers, maybe a CFO controller, just kind of another layer or two of leadership. And then a $50 million business is going to have more than that. But we just want to see that there is a system and a process in place to develop that leadership. So that's kind of bucket one. Bucket two, I would say, is processes and procedures. So once you're acquired, you're going to be asked to do certain things. If anyone says they're not going to ask you to make any changes or do anything like that, they're lying to you. Something is going to change, and change is fine. But some of the things we do, for example, we need everyone to be on ServiceTitan. We just need numbers to be coherent across the whole group. And the same thing with our accounting systems. We're going to ask you to get on Intact. Most people are on QuickBooks or something similar. And the reason why, again, is not to be a pain, but just we need to be able to roll up all the numbers every month and have them be apples to apples. So things like that require change, and they require some rigor. And we need to know that your team can handle a process and a procedure like that. It also is going to show, we're going to look at how you run your calls, how you answer the phone, how you deal with customer complaints. All of that is going to be an indicator to us that you are able to problem solve, that you have the customer in mind, that you can iterate, that you can experiment. All of those are good indicators that you'll be able to have a successful business long into the future, even as processes change, is you can adapt and change with that. And then the last one is financials and metrics. Financials and metrics are obviously important because, one, the businesses need to make money. At the end of the day, as an investor, you're looking for something that is going to generate a return. You're going to pay all this cash up front, and over time, you hopefully get all that cash back. That's what we all do in investing. That's why we buy houses, besides just to live in, right? We hope that value increases over time and that we get that money back. So it has to make sense financially, but the metrics also can indicate where you're strong and where you're weak. And being able to speak to the numbers is going to show that you're data-driven, that you can figure out what went wrong yesterday and how we're going to change it today. And if you don't know those numbers or don't know those metrics, that's kind of an indicator to us that you may not have a pulse on your business the way that we would like you to have a pulse on your business. And not everyone's perfect at that. And we have tools and systems in place to help you do better. But we kind of want to see that you're able to do that to some extent.
No, that makes sense. And when I look at the overall, those three things, it's actually funny. I had a call with somebody, not for the point of wanting to sell our business, but to understand, okay, what do we need to build? Should we ever want to get to that position to sell? But that also then creates stability and a lot of the same things: leadership, process and procedures, financials and metrics. I since you have the accounting and the financial background, I think I want to go a little bit deeper on the number side of things here. Not to say that I don't think you can speak to the leadership as well as the processes and procedures. That's what I'm talking
like
about.
a dig, didn't
Right?
it?
A little bit. I think your expertise is probably more geared towards the financials and the metrics, based off of what we chatted about before. Evan decided to grace us with his presence here today.
Just slipped right in.
Yeah, just slipped right in, eh? So, so I guess in terms of, like you mentioned, what metrics that a person is looking at and the metrics that they should look at and what are those things that go involved with that. So I guess in terms of the metrics and the financials, what are things that a business owner should be aware of and be looking at to be able to position themselves to be ready for this?
Yeah. The obvious ones that people talk about are revenue and your margins. Typically, businesses are valued as a multiple of your EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. I think most people kind of understand what that is. So EBITDA is important and revenue is important. However, one thing that's really important too is your momentum and your growth over time. So when we ask for information, we're not just wondering, what did you do this last year? We want to see your last 5 years. Because that tells a story. It tells the story of growth. And we want to see businesses that are growing and have momentum. Our business model is not one where we're looking for turnarounds. There are some groups out there that want turnarounds. You can buy them cheap, fix them, and make them more profitable. That's not for us. We're looking for businesses that are growing and just want to throw gasoline on the fire.
You're the buy and hold, not the flip.
That's it. Yeah. And frankly, we just don't have the operating personnel to put a new person in every business. We need you to be able to stand on your own and lean on us for resources and support where needed.
Right.
And so that's our business model. And so part of that is momentum. Like, how is your revenue growing? What is your revenue split? Like, one thing for HVAC companies specifically that's interesting is we'll look at how much is replacement and how much is service. And a big question is, how good are you at using marketed leads versus turnovers, and having a technician in the home and being able to turn that into a bigger ticket by handing it off to a salesperson, or if you have selling techs, by selling a higher ticket. So some of that is interesting. We'll dig into that. We'll dig into margins by service department. We'll want to know how you're tracking costs if you have multiple trades, from your HVAC install segment to your service and maintenance to plumbing. We'll want to know what each one of those looks like independently. Again, that's going to highlight which segments are doing well and which aren't. So from a P&L perspective, that's kind of what we look like. We'll also dig into kind of each individual line item. If certain things are standing out as you're spending too much on certain things, we'll look at that as opportunities to improve over time. But those are some of the big ones. We also like to look into the service titan data, and we'll run a regression analysis and figure out what your average tickets are over time and how those are changing. We'll look at your job sizes and figure out how many are super big, how many are super small. And a lot of that is fact finding. We know no company is perfect. We're definitely not perfect. If someone were to dig into our numbers, they'd have all sorts of things and questions that they would find. Really what we're trying to do is get an understanding. As long as you are trending in the right way, as long as you guys have the businesses, the processes in place, the people in place, we can work with that and we can make it better together. So really part of it is fact finding, and part of it is identifying areas where we can work on it together.
Nope, 100% agree to that. So one thing that it's actually funny you mentioned replacement versus service, especially what we're seeing from the market and what the market is dictating in terms of the silent recession, as some people are calling it, an economic slowdown, as some people are calling it. Some people are like, "What recession? My business is growing," right? And obviously, I think that's a little bit of a mindset thing. But from a business health perspective, from your guys' opinion, what do you like to see on a percentage breakdown? And I know that no business is the same, and so obviously this is going to be catered specifically to the business. But is there a range that you guys like to see for the health of a business?
No specific range, but I'd say too far one way or the other is concerning. So we recently looked at a business where 80% of their business was install, and 80% of that install came from marketed leads. So what happens if all of a sudden advertising's not working, or gets turned off, or Facebook or Google gets mad at you for 6 months? Well, 50% of your business is going to dry up pretty much overnight. And it's also a question of, have your technicians built the skill of going in for a service call or a tune-up and being able to identify concerns, give the customer options, and flip that into a replacement option? Maybe not, because you've been leaning so much on the marketed leads. So one way or the other, I'd say somewhere in that 40 to 60%, either way, is probably healthy and normal. If you're starting to get to 80-20 on either side, we're going to start to question how balanced you are as a business.
Well, one thing that's really, really evident to me as we're having this conversation, and even in talking to some of the other guys on your team as well, Dustin, we had on the show last year. And I mean, I've listened to Wyatt on other podcasts and other messages that he's given as well. And Chris as well from the marketing team. The standards and the expectations that you have set both internally for Any Hour and externally as you're looking at other businesses are exceptionally high. And you are looking for the best of the best, which is really exciting. But for a lot of companies, that's a missing component is having strict standards as to what it is that they're expecting for themselves. So when did that become evident as you started growing in this process of adding on all of these extra companies?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, actually a story. So every week we have our mega huddle on Monday. That's where all the managers come in for 30 minutes to an hour. And there's probably 40 managers that come in. And one of the things we do is go over the numbers from the last week. We have a really good dashboard that digs into what everyone did and if we hit numbers. And I remember my first week sitting in on this, and they had beat budget by something like 40%. Like they were expected to do a certain number last week, and they did it. They exceeded it by 40%. And there was like no celebration about this at all. And I had just come from a publicly traded company where a 40% overperformance is reason to celebrate. And it was just par for the course for these guys. And I was so surprised. And in fact, there was like this little quib that people have thrown out time and time again is like, we only clap if it's above 60%. It's just like, what in the world? And so that's just the any-hour mentality is like, they are just used to growing and hitting numbers. That's right. The culture. We hit numbers in our business. And they've grown 10 to 30% year over year because of that. That's just the expectation. And one of that is just having good data. So if you have a bad day, we have the numbers readily available to go over the next day so that we can dig in and say, okay, we had a bad day yesterday. Why? Mm-hmm. Did the phones not ring? Did we not convert those calls into booked appointments? What was our closing rate? How many options were we giving? Et cetera, so that whatever the issue was yesterday, it doesn't happen again today, and we fix it immediately. Mm-hmm. And that's why we do daily huddles. That's why we have weekly one-on-ones with everyone. And that's why we have this mega huddle every week, is to make sure we are correcting things right when it happens, because we're not perfect and we'll have bad days. But if we can eliminate those as quickly as possible, we can turn them around and have good days.
Mm. Well, and just that introspective look too, to make sure that things are going the right way for it is a powerful piece on that. So one question that did come in from Kevin Lesage from Searchlight, love those guys. And he put Corey instead of Covey, so he'll have to correct that. You probably get that quite a bit, don't you? All the time, yeah. So how does Covey value ROI of marketing when looking to acquire? Curious about how you approach that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So we have kind of a list of questions that our marketing director, Mike, likes to ask people. ROI is not one that we're too concerned about. Marketing ROI is really hard to measure. Mm-hmm. It's hard to get attribution. You market on billboards, on TV, on the radio, in print, online, and then someone calls in through a certain number, it comes in through a certain channel, and it's hard to really say where those impressions came from. So we don't put a lot of metrics on ROI. And the reason why is because we're going to help you a ton in marketing once you come on. We now have a 15-person marketing team, ranging from SEO and SEM specialists to videographers to social experts to graphic designers, you name it. People that have these real, this incredible ability to do that particular craft really, really well. We have a big studio with a green screen. We have a podcast studio. And the whole idea is we want to help you with that marketing. And we have some tips and tricks that we think we've learned how to do pretty well at any hour. But it's market specific. And so we're going to, understand what works in your market and then kind of tweak it and go from there. But ROI is not one that we're going to scrutinize too heavily, honestly.
Well, makes sense. Hopefully that helps out. My bad. He says he caught himself, so my bad. So
that's good.
Hopefully that helps Kevin in. And look, and you nailed it right on the head. And like you can do like in what they have a Searchlight can really track, some of the online stuff and revenue attribution, revenue, ROAS, return on ad spend potential, ROAS close, and where's the gap? Is it on marketing companies, is it on the operations, or is it both, right? It really exposes that. But the other part, though, is that Google takes the credit for everywhere else, right? Mm-hmm. So if somebody sees a billboard or radio or TV, and then they Google that business because they heard it, now they're going to come through, and that's where that attribution comes there. But obviously having that good online digital presence, our table on the back is just running off the side of the table. There's been a drip in this thing, and I can hear it in the headphones. So
there is no fixing it.
No, it's just let it go.
Put a cup underneath it, maybe.
It's coming around all sides of the table. So
a little stuff coming off after we put the trash can underneath it.
Oh man, just leave it, Evan. Just leave it. No, just leave it. Just leave it. It's fucked. You can't really see it because it's just in the corner where Evan was. but they have a table in the back and it has a water cooler and it's been dripping. And now it just started running off the side of the table like mad because it's been dripping all day.
This form of torture is illegal, I think, by the UN.
Waterboarding.
Everyone's going to hear it now. Yeah.
But to go back to the, and this is the part that I love about the live. It's Google takes the credit, but it's what's this all-encompassing approach? What are you doing to build the brand? What are you doing to have this impact in your marketplace? And some of them are just intangibles. Sponsoring a little league soccer team, for example, football as they call it everywhere else outside of North America, could be, give you some really good community goodwill, but there might not be a direct ROI to that. And so it's fascinating to hear that.
Yeah. If anything on ad spend, we're looking at it as a percentage of revenue. We kind of have a target percentage that we'd like you to spend,
which
on
is
advertising, close to 10%. Any hour spends 10% of revenue every year. And that number obviously gets bigger the bigger we get. And so we can obviously talk about how that number is split up, but yeah, we think investing in advertising is important.
Sure. I was writing some down. So
let's definitely talk about that and breaking it down in terms of what percentages are going where. But I also want to make sure that we point out 10% of last year's revenue or 10% of projected revenue for
10% of projected, 10% of budgeted revenue for the year.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I know that's what we coach clients on and that's what we talk about, but that's not the way that everyone approaches it. So that's why I want to point it out.
I used to think that it was 10% of previous, right? Or whatever your number was in previous, because nobody ever really educated on that. So, spend 10% of your revenue on marketing. Okay, well, and then we had Peter Green from Go Green Plumbing and Air on the show, and he's like, no, it's forecasted, right? So I'm like, that makes sense, right? Because if you want to be a $10 million per year business, well, you should probably advertise like a $10 million per year business.
And if you're budgeting right, you should have that monthly, if not weekly. Mike at Any Hour has done a tremendous job. Every once in a while in our mega huddle, he'll throw up these charts. We have call volume by day from the past number of years. So we'll know at certain times, all of a sudden we're going to get a big dip in calls, and we can look back and go, wait, this week was slow. Why is that? And we'll look back and like, oh, seasonally, everyone in the third week of September goes back to school and we have this dip in calls. So like, this isn't unusual and we're not freaking out and panicking. And that data is really helpful. So we can see the ebbs and the flows over years correlated with temperatures. And it just kind of helps us figure out when we're going to run the promotions, and our budget aligns with that. We build that based off of historicals. So data is your friend if you can use it.
Yeah. And you can get it and you can extrapolate it and you can analyze it.
Analyze?
No,
I'm pretty sure in
Canada, it's a real word.
Jalapeno. It's pronounced jalapeno, Ricky.
Do you guys fluctuate that marketing budget throughout the year depending on demand and things like that, where you would flow it more towards brand versus region?
Yeah, it's definitely monthly, if not weekly.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Love that.
Yep. Is there a certain percentage of breakdown that, because you mentioned that earlier, or is it kind of specific on the year? Well,
I'm sure there is, but I don't know what it is.
Right. You don't know what it is.
It's very heavy digital.
Yeah. Right. Fair. So like 8% digital, 2% otherwise.
I couldn't give you the exact numbers. I would
want to throw you under
whatever I say. Mike will hear it and he'll be like, "You idiot!"
Yeah, that was wrong. Yeah, that's fair. Well, but hey, this is also a good thing for people here. Is don't talk about something you don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right? And it's okay to say you don't know, right? Which is good. So, I mean, hey, I think we could probably keep going, but in the essence of time, we're at 28 minutes. So, Covey, I do thank you for taking some time out to get in touch with us here. Have a conversation, about some of the things that a business should be looking at, should they want to do. And look, these things, whether you're looking at, merging and acquiring with, something like an Any Hour, and there's other brands out there that are doing it as well, or selling private equity, these things are likely the same across the board, in terms of what you're doing and looking at some of those things. So thank you for taking the time to chat. You do want to drop Dustin's number, though. So if anybody has any questions about this, you might be interested in exploring how the Any Hour program works for coming on board into their team. So why don't you go ahead and drop his number?
Yeah, my mom gave me the advice, never give your phone number out on the internet. So I'm gonna stick to that.
Give Dustin's instead.
Give Dustin's instead. Yeah.
Dustin is kind of our brand ambassador. So he just takes phone calls from anyone and everyone. So if you're listening, if you're interested in learning more about Any Hour, we've done tours forever. We've taken visitors. I can't even imagine. Like in the last year, we've had hundreds of people come through. I think this year alone, we've done over 150 tours from people that have come to visit different companies. So our doors are open. If you want to learn more about what we're doing, give us a call. Dustin's number is 801-787-3546. And I'm sure this will go in the show notes at some point. 801-787-3546. call or text Dustin. Tell him you're interested in coming and doing a tour, and we'd love to have you. We'll answer all your questions. We'll walk you around. We'll introduce you to the people that you want to talk to in any part of the business, and hopefully help you grow your business. We've learned a lot by touring other people's shops, and we feel like it's good juju to kind of give back.
No, 100%. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. This was awesome.
And until next time.
Cheers.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed. Before you go, two quick things. First off, join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/HVAC Revealed. The other thing, if you took one tiny bit of information out of this show, no matter how big, no matter how small, all we ask is for you to introduce this to one person in your contacts list. That's it. That's all. One person. So they too can unleash the ultimate HVAC business. Until next time, cheers.